we'll talk a little bit about oligopolies. Now, main characteristics of an oligopolies is there are a few large firms. Okay, only a few firms in this market, okay, or in this industry. All right, the second main characteristics is that basically each firm has to take into account what other firms are doing. Okay, here's where we'll start talking a little bit about interdependence. Okay, what one firm does basically affects what other firms do. If one firm lowers their price, maybe other firms will do the same thing. Or if one firm raises their price, maybe other firms will also do the same thing. Okay, this is what we mean by mutual interdependence. Okay, each firm must take into account the behavior of their competitors. And the third main characteristic of a oligopoly is here that we have significant barriers of entry. All right, so here again we have few large firms. Okay, so somehow or another, maybe these firms are making profit, right? Other firms want to come in, but they can't. Okay, why is that? Because there's some kind of barrier of entry here, right? So this is the main characteristics we like to think about when we think about an oligopoly, right? Few firms. Reality doesn't matter if they sell an identical product or a differentiated product, right? Each firm must take into account the behavior of their competitors, right? Is when we talk about this term. We say mutual independence. Let me write this a little clearer, right? Mutual, M-U-T-U-A-L, interdependence. And lastly, there's significant barriers of entry, right? I want to get into this market, but I can't for whatever reason. Okay. All right, so let's discuss cartels, right? What is a cartel? All right, maybe it's not the kind of cartel that you're used to hearing about, right? A cartel in economics, right, is basically an agreement between firms to not compete with each other, right? To actually collude. We'll say an agreement between firms in an industry to collude. By collude, I just mean work together or agree, right, on price and output. Okay. Now, in the United States, this is illegal, right? In a lot of other countries, this is illegal. Cartels, right? You can't collude. You can't call up one firm, can't call the other, right? Walmart can't call Target and say, hey, you know, let's put our prices up at the same time and let's not give people any other options. Okay? Illegal in the United States. You can't do that. Right? However, where it's not illegal is maybe internationally. Right now, the most famous cartel is what we call right here, OPEC. Right? You may have heard of OPEC before. OPEC is what we call OPE. Here we go. OPEC, OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. I'm sorry, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So this is a bunch of countries, I think there's about 10 or 11, that get together and say, hey, you know what? Let's restrict our output of oil, right? Let's not produce a lot of oil in order to cause the price to shoot up, right? They want to act monopoly-like, okay? Now, here's where we get into a little bit of game theory, right? A little bit of strategy here. Now, think about it. If I'm an oil producer, we'll give a simple example here where we shall say that we have this oil company, or I'm sorry, not this oil company, these countries that they come together and they try to act monopoly-like. Okay, and we'll say this is their demand curve here, and we'll say this is their marginal revenue curve. All right, maybe it looks something like this. Okay. All right, good. And we'll say that over here, we'll say that perhaps this point right here is where they'll want to maximize their profits, right? We'll say here maybe this is a price of 8, okay, and we'll say they'll produce, we'll say 50 units. Okay, now for simplicity, right, we'll assume there's only 5 members here in this cartel. Okay, so one member produces 10, another member produces 20, one produces, I'm sorry, each member produces 10, right? So one member produces 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, right? So we have 5 members and they're each producing 10, we'll say, I don't know, million barrels of oil. Okay? All right, good. So each of them is producing, draw little dotted lines here, each of them producing 10 barrels here. Okay? So this price times this quantity, this is the total revenue for everybody in the cartel here. Okay? Now, the idea here is this. If I continue to increase production, my price goes down. Okay? Now, let's say again we have these 5 members, right? Each of them is producing 10 barrels of oil. One of them says to themselves, you know what? Let me try to cheat here, right? What do I mean by cheating? Okay? Here, let me, instead of only producing 10 barrels of oil, maybe one of these countries wants to double their production and produce 20. So as a whole, we'll say their production increases to 60, right? Because we have one firm that's producing 20 units of oil more, right? So we'll assume, right, again for simplicity, as we produce more oil, price is going down. We'll say the price goes down here to 6. Okay? All right, so here, this area right here, try to shade this in purple. Okay, this area, we'll say this is the revenue gained by that one country who basically cheated. Okay, good. Notice all of that. Now, this area over here, okay, we'll say here this is the revenue lost by all countries. Okay, so notice, right, that one country, right, they went ahead and maybe lost this little amount of revenue but gained all of this. Okay, this is why it's difficult for OPEC to kind of cooperate, right? This is why it's difficult for them to keep the prices of oil high. Why? Because there's this problem here, right? If one country decides to increase production, price goes down and everybody else basically feels the effect, right? But that one country that kind of defected, right, or increased production, they benefit, right? Their revenues gained versus everybody else here.